Okay, how do we talk to our kids about porn? Okay, we're going to jump into this topic that I wish I had when I was a little wee Coby. But in the meantime, we're going to just read a quick review. This is called Powerful, actually. And it says, I just found this podcast and I've already listened to a couple, but the episode that won me over the most was the episode on boundaries versus ultimatums. Truly one of the best decisions I've ever heard around, truly one of the best discussions I've ever heard around that topic. Highly recommend.
Thank you.
Very, very good review. Pretty interesting how that struck home. And anytime you guys hear something that you like, love to hear you rate and review the podcast.
Yeah. And I'm glad that boundaries helped, because that is one messy topic
that
we actually spend an entire module on for our program, Shattered Trust to Thriving in Intimacy. Okay. I'm excited. We have Dina Alexander with us. She is the founder of some of my favorite books out there. 30 Days of Sex Talks is the ones that we love and use and keep in our car. But she's here to talk to us today and educate us, because she's the founder of Educate and Empower Kids, which is a great organization determined to help strengthen families by teaching digital citizenship, media literacy, and healthy sexuality and education, including the dangers of online pornography. So she's the creator of How to Talk to Your Kids About Pornography and the 30 Days of Sex Talks and 30 Days to a Stronger Child program. She has lots more books as well. She really knows what she's talking about, and she makes it really simple for us as parents to step into these harder topics that really can be beautiful connecting moments with our children as an ongoing thing, rather than let's have the one-time talk and we're done. So she's really teaching us a lot of skills that we learned more in therapy. And so I love when people are bringing what we've had to spend a lot of time and effort and money, and they're putting it in something simple that I can take and just give to my kids. So Dina lives, she has her degree from the University of Utah in recreational therapy and her bachelor's from Brigham Young University. She loves being a mom and spending time with her husband and her 3 kids, and they live in New Mexico. So we're all here remotely, as usual, thanks to COVID. And we're just happy to have you here.
Thank you. I really love being here. So thanks for having me on.
This is going to be a great episode, one that we've been looking forward to personally, but I really think if you're listening to this, you're going to find some rich content. And I think if we do our job, I think you'll also maybe be even a little uncomfortable. And if that's the case, that's a great thing. That's a really great thing. So good to have you, Dina, honestly.
Thanks.
Okay, so I want to just start with, I was looking in your book, How to Talk to Kids About Pornography, or 30 Days to Pornography. What is the actual topic? Okay, how to talk to your kids about pornography. So simple, right? But in the beginning, you have some statistics, and okay, so here's the science behind it, right? And it says the average age back in 2015 was 11 years old. And for those listening who've been here before, Coby was introduced at what age?
7.
Right. And so we've often said, well, Coby is like, I'm so glad I wasn't born now, where it's so much more available, and to just jump into that. And so I think we have a bigger responsibility as parents, because there's so much more out there that is influencing our children and their heads and their beliefs, that we can step into that. We can do the hard stuff, especially with the people we love the most, our kids, and have us be the resource. So another statistic I but it stood out, is 2009, 42% of adolescents were exposed to porn online, and 66% of them described exposure as unwanted. So that's something we taught our kids from the go, was that even if you're not looking for it, they're looking for you. Coby and I, when we shared our videos that shared our story in the beginning, years and years ago, when they put it over on YouTube, they were tagging words that went with it, like recovery and marriage and whatever. And the stuff that would pop up right after our video was porn. And so it was like totally defeating the purpose of these videos to bring hope and knowledge. And so then they started, okay, we'll use tags like butterflies and,
unicorns and rainbows.
Guess what
Legit.
happened? Same stuff. And so it was just like, okay, take all the tags off because this isn't serving the people that are watching. So it's just,
yeah, no, absolutely. And I appreciate you mentioning that because it's so important for every parent. It doesn't matter your background, whether you're liberal, conservative, Christian, agnostic. The industry is hunting our kids, no matter what your background, or if you're a homeschooler or your kids are in public school or whatever. I have heard every excuse in the world as to why my kids are not going to be exposed, supposedly, or I have girls, so I don't need to talk about it. Just, all those notions that maybe worked for our parents are no longer valid or helpful. It's that realizing that, yes, it's an industry that is absolutely hunting our children, just like Coca-Cola, just like Barbie, any other industry that is in the business of making money, which is every industry. They're hunting our kids, right? They are allowed to. The law allows for them to market to our kids, and there's very little restraint and very little overseership online for to stop the porn industry, who has, of course, I'm sure, as you've realized, in recent years, has really focused their attention on teenage girls and women. Because they woke up to the idea that, oh, we have half the population that we can really exploit as well and make money from. And so, again, I hope parents firmly understand that it's not just for boys, but it's definitely for girls. You were exposed at 7. My daughter was exposed at age 8 from another 3rd grade girl at recess. On her at recess.
Oh yes.
So
that was the quote unquote, schoolyard playground that really opened my eyes to this whole world that I became fixated on, and had no idea the trajectory that it put me on. Absolutely. But looking back, it was the playground, like on recess, was exactly where that happened. I have kind of a quick question. I know you've got a list of questions, Ashlynn, but just contextually, from your experience, Dina, what is the educational message that parents are giving to kids now, and is it enough?
The message that I'm still seeing, and it's a little frustrating because it's even my friends that are in healthcare professions. So these are people that I have a higher standard of expectation because they have the medical background. They have been taught very openly. They themselves in medical school or nursing school say they gave vaginal exams, right? It was in their face. And I see even these parents scared to talk. And it's not just Christian parents. It is my atheist friends, agnostic. Again, I thought at first when I first started this organization and first started talking about this, oh, this is a Christian issue. I cannot get my Christian friends to talk about sex. And it was like, I realized, nope, all of my friends from whatever background were just as scared, whatever their cultural background, Black, white, Latino, Asian, each has their own set of hangups as to what they're worried about talking. And so, and then with all of us have had, even if we haven't had betrayal trauma, a lot of us, you think about the backgrounds, right? So most women, so 1 out of 4, some say 1 out of 3 women has had sexual abuse in her life, 1 out of 5 men. So right there, that is a huge percentage of the population that all of us are coming with different stories, different issues, and things that make us uncomfortable. And that's one of the things I really encourage parents to do as they're starting to think, okay, my child is 6 or 7, or maybe even younger, or they're realizing, oh, my child is 12 and I haven't had a talk with them yet. I really encourage parents to start thinking about what makes me uncomfortable. What are the topics that make me nervous? And that's why we did divide the books into 30 topics to kind of break them down into these small parts, but it also helps us go, oh, I don't mind talking about menstruation. Oh, puberty, I'm okay with that. I don't really want to talk about orgasm. And so that way you can kind of start to realize the things that you're comfortable and you're not comfortable with, because we want you to start where you're comfortable, start where you're okay. Because again, We all have some hang up. We've all have had something happen to us. We've seen something, whether that's in porn, R-rated movies, or maybe we've had a bad experience as a teenager or in college that is going to affect the way we approach this. And when we're talking about pornography, again, I think a lot of parents think, well, I covered pornography, so I'm done. Not realizing if you want your kids to understand the light, you have to talk about the darkness too, right? So you've talked about the darkness of pornography. You got to talk about the light as well. You have to talk about those positive, amazing, beautiful opportunities there are in sexual intimacy so that they can start building that sexual script so that it's not just, oh, this is bad. Oh, they said that. Oh, someone's going to pressure me into doing this. If they touch me, that's bad, you know, which I've seen even with little girls who their parents have started out with a good conversation, but they forgot or were too scared to bring in the good parts of sex.
So Dina, I got a question for you. So what I'm kind of hearing you say, maybe I'm clarifying, is, you know, I can say menstruation, vagina, orgasm, like I can force those words out and say those things to my kids, you know. But really it's kind of the energy behind it, right? It's, you know, if I read your book and it's like, okay, like I know I'm supposed to say these things, and then I go very awkwardly and uncomfortably and, you know, have this weird talk with my kids, but say all the right words, I'm still not really like helping that much, right?
Well, there's two things that you say that. So yes. So first, like, that's why I say, find what you're comfortable talking about. That's why maybe the conversation is just going to be about some of the great marriages that you see in the neighborhood or at church. Hey, that's a great relationship, you know, or, hey, what do you want in a husband someday? What do you want in a wife? That's the beginning of a sex and a porn talk. Yeah. So find that space that you're comfortable. And then also by the practice. So maybe like, I just said vagina, you know, whatever you're nervous about, practice, just like any other skill, just like learning to type, learning to cook. You're not going to get it right the first time. You got to practice, you know. And a lot of us, you know, I was brought up in a home where my mother talked about sex like this, right? Even after my parents had an ugly divorce, she was still very positive in talking about sex, so that I knew, okay, this is something awesome. Okay. And for me personally, it was, okay, this is something I wanted to wait for. I knew I was like, I'm worth waiting for, was kind of the message my mom was trying to instill in us. And some of my siblings got it. Some of them were like, you're weird, you know, whatever. You're not going to hit it 100% with your kids, but also you got to practice. And then that way you build that your kids realize, I can talk to mom about that. She said that word, or maybe we made a joke about it, or, you know, oh, maybe we talked about the different words there are for breasts. Oh, and then that mom said it, or dad said it, then it becomes okay. You know, and then then you start building those habits, because I know with my kids, we started talking very young. And then when I got into Educate and Empower Kids and talking about pornography, I mean, I was realizing at that time, my 8, 11, and 13-year-old probably knew more about pornography than all of their friends, from the educational side of it, right? From the media literacy, how to read images side of it, the academic side of it, than anybody else they knew. That I remember thinking and having that other conversations of, this is how we're talking about it here, but this is not okay to talk about on the playground, yes. Right? Well, almost, I can guarantee most of your friends are not talking about it in this context. Please do not talk about this. Now, whether they were 100% on that or not, I didn't grill into that, because to me, it was just more important that they had the right words and the right context of a lot of these things. And so, like I said, you got to practice, and there's always a place you can find that you're comfortable starting.
I like that. That sounds very doable, especially if you are in a place listening to this where it all is overwhelming and scary. I have my own stuff wrapped up in, I can't bring this out for my kids. It sounds doable, and I really appreciate that about all of this. So, my question is, what age do we start? Because I've heard so many different things about this, and people get very passionate about it's too young or they're too old now, what do you guys recommend?
I recommend as soon as possible, because again, with parents, I'm seeing this in the hands of 8-month-olds
Yeah.
and 2-year-olds, and they can just as easily find porn as a 12-year-old just by accident. So if you're, pardon me, foolish enough to give a small child this, then you better be talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be discussing about the academic views of pornography. You don't need to be talking about the hatred that is spewed in pornography or the dominant submissive role in pornography that is often, you don't have to give the feminist view. What you can start out is you're going to, at some point, you're going to see pictures of naked people. Okay. It's not appropriate. You need to tell me when you see that. Or if you see anything that makes you feel uncomfortable, that gives you an icky feeling, you have to talk on that language that a 4 or 5-year-old can understand of, hey, you know, when you maybe see a spider, or maybe you've touched a spider, or you've picked up a spider, or you stepped on one and you had maybe that little bit of an icky feeling. If you see anything, maybe you see somebody on the computer or on TV hitting each other or hurting each other, please let me know. We need to talk about that. You know, letting your kids know it's going to be out there. They're going to see it on the school bus, at scout camp, at girls camp, at church activities, at a sleepover. Please don't have sleepovers. Okay. We're so over that. Okay, people.
Think of the 80s.
But all these, you know, there's so many opportunities from the best kids. You know, people thinking my kid would never. I'm like, no, it's all of our kids, and they're all good kids.
Yeah.
They are all good kids being exposed. So letting them just real simple when they're young. And so in whatever language that they need, but it's got to be just for the little kids. You may like, it's naked people, or they're going to be, or they're doing something sexual. And believe me, if they're watching TV or using a phone, they're going to know what you mean. Unfortunately, even at that kindergarten age, that or anything that makes you uncomfortable, please tell me, or that might be it. And then also, as if you gauge that they understand that, then you want to help them know this is pornography. Use the word so that they can name it, because they might see it at they're going to see it young, whether that's 8, 10 years old. They need to be able to name it. Having the name helps us take the fear away from it. Okay. It makes it less of a boogeyman kind of a thing. So I think
Why is that important though?
I think it's important for them to have the words to use to tell you what they saw. Okay, whether they're saying porn or pornography, they need to have that language to tell you. And again, I know that I remember being at a homeschool conference. I don't want my child to even know the word pornography, I had this mom say to me. I was like, yeah, not knowing the word, that's going to protect them, huh? Like, you can say terrorism, and you can say Black Lives Matters, and you can say, you know, all these other movements and things that are happening, but you can't say something that 99% of the population is going to be exposed to. It's like, no, we need to talk about and have the words. Just like, again, when my child, if something is bothering her vagina, I want her to say to me, my vagina hurts, or it's itchy, or I want them to, or someone touched me there. I want them to be able to have those words. And it's the same thing with pornography. They need to just have that simple. And again, if you're talking about it like this, then they're going to have all kinds of weird reactions. But if you're going to see it, it's called pornography, you know, then that calm way of talking.
Love it.
I just want to say really quick, thank you for saying that, because we got a lot of flack that we taught our kids like proper names and educated them about what improper touch, you know, from someone, unwanted touch, that type of thing. But our kids wouldn't have come and told us that they were sexually abused had they not known what it even was. And so
exactly. It's not, because it's important for parents. You're not stealing innocence. Okay, not having the words and not having the tools to speak about it, that is what steals innocence and hurts children. Being able to name it, that's having the words, that's knowledge that is empowering.
Right.
That's not anything to do with taking
beautiful.
their innocence. So
that's a good way to put that, Dina. I say that all the time, but I've never heard it put that way. And that's a really good way to put it. You know, I hear all the time, like, well, I don't want to like plant ideas in their heads and, all of that stuff. But, yeah.
And I'm sorry, go ahead. You'll hear that forever. I hear that, and it's like we were born curious. It's called biology.
And we're sexual, yes.
Yeah, and that's how we have survived as a human species. That is how we discovered electricity and all these marvelous things. It's by being curious. Your kids are going to be curious no matter what, whether you teach them these words or the school kids on the schoolyard or teach it to them. We want them to be curious. Curiosity is not bad or evil. It's something that we need to embrace and encourage and teach our kids the right ways to learn and do research.
Does not also speak to, Dina, their readiness to learn?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Their curiosity?
Absolutely.
Because if I know for sure that I was the curious kid, but when there wasn't any information, when there wasn't any content, that my parents shared with me, then I came to my own conclusions, not because I was like, well, they're not going to tell me, then I'm going to do it. I came to my own conclusions. It just so happens to be that I was a kid who came to conclusions on the playground rather than in a conversation with my parents. And again, this is my own experience, is exactly why we love what you've done with this series of books, but specifically with this book, it is so empowering for me to think about, because I don't have to have the answers. And I think that's one of the conversations, Ashlynn, you and I've had a lot, is I don't have to know. I don't have to be the expert. And that's what's kept us from having the conversation, is because it's like, I don't know. But your books have been super helpful. So Ash, what are some things that are front of mind for you as it relates to this whole book, this arena?
Yes. Well, okay. So Coby and I, we have two of your books that we keep in the car, and just my passenger side. And when we go on like a drive that's maybe like 30 minutes long, I just take it out. It's, they're 1-page chapters. They're very short, but they have questions to ask the kids, and, what words have you heard lately that you're curious about? And it always, every single time, sparks such great conversation. And yesterday we did one on a drive, and I said, are you guys okay if I read this book? And they're like, yeah, like no problem. Let's do it. And it's not this icky, weird thing, but it's also, there's no eye contact. Like they feel really safe there in the back seat. And when they ask those questions that are a little bit like, oh, okay, yeah, they don't see my reaction. We just go into it. And hey, maybe I don't know that answer. I was very open and honest that I was learning things with them in the 30 days of sex talk, and that's sad. I'm 40, but it's true. And that's where we were with that.
Legit, I had no idea that females could have wet dreams like males do.
Yeah, that was
total news to me.
Yeah, no, and we've heard that from a lot of parents, and that's why, like in the book, there's such an extensive glossary.
Yes,
I've had so many people say the glossary is the best part of this book for me, because I didn't know what to say, or I didn't have the right words, and we tried to make it again really simple instead of like a medical school text. Yeah. But it should be. And I love that you said that it's a safe place, and you recognize in your kids that it's just easier in the car. Yeah. And again, all of us are going to have our place and our time that we have good conversation. When my kids were really little, it was laying down for bed. They always wanted us to lay next to them. We'd read a story, and then we would chat about their day or whatever. And sometimes it would go into the perfect lead into a sex talk. Now it's pretty much for us, as my kids are all teenagers, it is at the dinner table. We talk about our day, and then it's usually something political that comes up, something on the news, a current event. And then if it happens to be something that we need to talk, about something that's about sex. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that was not even on the horizon, because again, there is so much continuing research with sex. So our parents, I'm sure, certainly didn't know that a female could have a wet dream. Our parents certainly never thought to talk about anal sex. But that is a thing, not just because it is culturally popular, but again, because porn has made it so popular that our kids are wondering, oh, is this something that needs to be part of my repertoire or whatever? Because not just boys, but girls are seeing so many different things that they think, oh, I need to act like this, or this is okay, this is sexy. So we need to be able to reframe it into intimacy. And, that you're going to have the best sex. The research shows the best sex happens in a committed relationship. These things that you can help your kids, again, understand it, not just as an act that they're going to see in porn, but in the bigger picture, and what a great reflection it is of a relationship, and how amazing, how it can bring you closer, all those things that they are not going to get in media or in porn. And so that's why we're probably the only set of sex talks books written that started as an organization that was anti-pornography. Do you know what I mean? Most sex talks books are written from a therapist or a medical perspective, where they're just like, everything is okay. Hey, have whatever, do whatever, no problem. Whereas we came from it as, whoa, this is not healthy. This is hurting people, families, and our culture. Let's approach sex with showing the opposite of what is going on and being taught in porn. I don't know any other sex book that is written from that perspective. And that's something that we've really tried to do in combating porn is, okay, let's talk about all the awesome things and help our kids be prepared for what they're going to see, and be able to have that context, so that when somebody approaches them, whether that's a boyfriend or a husband, approaches them for oral sex or anal, that they can go, oh, I don't know if I want to do that. Or is this really being done in love? Is this something special? Or am I being used as an object? So again, you might not have that discussion with your kids when they're young, but all of these conversations are those building blocks. One of the big discussions in here is about respect, about in the 12 plus book, abusive relationships versus healthy relationships. Man, that's a conversation I wish I had as a teenager, or known. I was so unknowledgeable that I didn't even know what the difference was. And again, watching my parents in an unhealthy marriage and divorce, I thought whenever you were mad, you had to raise your voice.
Yeah.
I thought that was how it was, so
we've had these conversations, I think 2 weeks ago in the car, about, I wish I had known to tell my mom, hey, this relationship I'm having with a boy, he's mean. He says really mean things to me, and that's not okay. But because he was my boyfriend, I just stayed. And so these books continue to bring up the conversations that I know we can have on our own, but this creates those experiences for us and helps us to get there, where maybe on our own, it would be all over the place,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we did try to do it in a progressive way, and in the how to talk to your kids about pornography. It's done in a progressive way, but that's by no means that that's the right place to start or stop. Mm-hmm. Again, because all of our kids are going to have had different levels of exposure to pornography. They're going to have different ages in development, but I think it's important that they all have some sort of understanding, a definition, and they need to have some kind of plan for when they are exposed. Even that, whether that's as a teenager and their friends are showing it to them. My son, one of the reasons we left the high school we were at living in a kind of a wealthy area in Texas. And we felt very strongly, very, prompted that we needed to get our kids out of this area. A lot of permissive parenting. But my son, was shown, girls were passing around their nudes so incredibly. And my son was being shown, friends, nude photos. I'll look at my girlfriend, right in the middle of class. And so there had to be we had to have a discussion of, well, how do you say that? How do you say I'm not interested, or no thanks? Is that something that you're going to be like, get that out of my face? Or are you going to say, no, dude, that's cool. I don't need to see that. Having that plan is really empowering, really helpful to a kid. We call it a run plan in our books to get away from it. One of the big pieces of that, though, is discussing it with your parents, because again, kids don't understand it. They'll feel that simultaneously. They might see porn and be simultaneously traumatized and turned on. And that's a very confusing feeling for a kid. And we need to be able to sort through that with them.
Yeah. I think there's this really kind of tricky nuance to it, which is, growing up, I was told, don't look at porn. Like, porn's bad. Don't do that. It's, and it's like, there's this paradoxical nature to talking to your kids about porn, because in some way, the parent, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh, I got to have that talk about porn with my kids and tell them like, hey, like you shouldn't look at porn. That is not what Dina is saying. Dina is saying somewhat of the opposite, which is, you know what, like you need to go be very open and talk comfortably about pornography and what it is, so that your kids can continue a dialogue and a discussion that's ongoing and feel safe when they do come across it, because they're going to come across it. So instead of saying don't come across it or don't view it or don't see it, it's saying you will see it. And when you see it, you can talk to me about it because I'm comfortable to talk to, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that my kids have been surprised, well, even at the beginning, but they are, whenever they would bring something up that I knew about it already. Do you know what I mean? That they would talk about something they had heard about, and it's because the top searched porn terms, which are the things that are most fed, right? Like a YouTube video, a popular YouTube video is going to come at you. The more it's watched, the more it's going to be served up to people, right? As a thing to possibly watch. It's the same thing with pornography. So these popular search terms that I've been very aware of. So my kids might mention something and I'd be like, oh yeah. But then I would kind of also tell them the real meaning of it, or what was really wrong with it, and how it's not okay, especially one of the most popular, and it's been popular for decades, is say incest porn, right? That in the old days it was daddy daughter, daddy stepdaughter kind of things, but now that has switched and we're seeing mom stepson kind of stuff. And that to me it was this is a disgusting thing, but I also knew I needed to say to my kids, this is not right. You need to know that these are the types of things out there, and not only is it exploitive of the people in it, but that this is something that is not cool. It is not sexy. That this is something that is so harmful in real life, that they're making it cute and okay, but that this is so destructive to a child or a teenager, that it is abusive and it is wrong, and that is why it is criminal. And I remember just, again, having a simple conversation like that with my kids, and it was like, oh, because again, it's like the same thing. When we were kids and we saw something R-rated, again, the music was there, the context that in our minds, it was sexy, right? Or, oh, that's what you do during sex. It's the same thing for our kids watching this. I might find my cousin or my aunt sexy. No, that's not okay. That it's okay to be curious. It's okay to see that somebody is attractive, but we're not going to ever find our mother or our stepmother sexy. That's not okay. So there are those conversations where we have to let them know that, again, they're showing these devious things that are not okay.
Yeah. In the book, you have a section on sex trafficking, which is a huge part that's, become more and more out there to help people understand the negative sides of pornography. And so I think that's important that you put that in there, that it's not just like porn is bad, don't watch it, but it's like, let me explain what's going on here.
Absolutely. Because
again, they're not showing.
that is my big thing, is giving them that big picture. So when they're little, if you see this, come tell me. Super simple. But again, as they get into that middle school, high school age, you want them to know what's really going on. That yes, that this is just videotaped prostitution. That these girls, that they're getting, that are barely 18, are being exploited, that they have managers who are really pimps, and also that what they're teaching is hateful. Pornography is one of the few places left in our culture where racism is totally celebrated, right? Where you can make fun of or degrade any other culture, and where women are treated like garbage. But again, like, it's celebrated in this. But so I'm not going to have that discussion with a 7-year-old. But an 11, 12-year-old, I might start discussing that to let them know, you know what, like, this is not to make you feel ashamed and that you're a bad person if you like this, or if you have seen it and you felt turned on. But you need to know that these people that are in it are human beings. And that is a very mature discussion. And basically, that's one of those like enlightening discussions you can have with your kids that helps click it over. It's kind of like when you realize when you're watching a commercial that everything is being airbrushed, or that those are actors having such a great time with their Barbie or their Hot Wheels cars, right? When you realize, oh my gosh, that's fake. It's that same kind of click that you want your kids to have, because that's when they can hopefully start seeing it in, say, an academic or a more objective way, instead of just like, this is something that turns me on, or, oh my gosh, like that's crazy. You know, they're seeing it as, whoa, there's something else bigger going on, that there is a very dangerous message that we want especially our middle schoolers and teenagers to really understand. Because again, that sets them up for knowledge in all sorts of other realms, especially with social media and any other advertising.
But Dina,
sorry, go ahead.
I think you do got to be careful with, I think there's like to do both of these things at the same time, which is, hey, that's dangerous. That's not okay. But at the same time, if they felt aroused and they liked it, and you're saying that's bad, you shouldn't like it. Like, what you don't want to do is push them further underground. What you don't want to say, that's bad, if you know, and then they feel like, well, I must be bad because I liked that. Yeah. So you have to do two things. You have to really acknowledge that it's normal and okay to be aroused. And,
absolutely.
And that stuff is actually designed to arouse them and excite them, and it's bad, and it causes problems. So both those things have to be there in order for the education to be very effective.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's important, and also to help them understand the difference between guilt and shame.
Yes.
You know, that shame is not healthy, and helping kids understand that shame is that feeling of, I'm a terrible person.
Yeah.
Versus guilt is, I made a mistake and I need to fix this. Helping them, because that's a tool, that's something you can teach kindergarten on, to start those building blocks, because all of us have faced it, right? All of us have felt that. And I'm a religious person, and you know, I try to teach my kids that is not from God. God doesn't use shame. That is another influence, that there is no reason why me as a parent, that I love you, I ever want you to feel shame. And so I really appreciate you bringing that up, that it is very important to help our kids know, like, this is absolutely designed to make you aroused, that they are experts. Just like a surgeon might be an expert at doing a particular surgery because he's done it 1,000 times. These are people that have been creating this, involved in this for years, if not decades. And they are experts at knowing exactly how to get you aroused and even to orgasm within 8 to 10 minutes, right? So that they have it down to a literal science. And so with using algorithms and such. So I think that's super important. And that's where you might even lead into a conversation about masturbation. Because again, that's something that most kids feel ashamed about. And I don't think it should be that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so again,
can you speak to that?
Well, I just want to say all these things are in your books, right? We do talk about shame and guilt. We do talk about masturbation, consent, pleasure, which are things, I'll be honest, we did not start with those things because it was like, I'm just going to educate, and educate is just like, don't do it. But there's a lot more that goes into it.
Yeah. And that's why they are divided into a 3 to 7, an 8 to 11, and a 12 plus. You know, we don't talk about pleasure with 3 to 7-year-olds and 8 to 10-year-olds. I mean, the lesson in the 8 to 11-year-old is children do not have sex is one of the lessons, unfortunately, that we have to have, right? But the talking about pleasure and all those positive aspects are definitely more in the 12 plus book, because to me, that's super important. I want my kids to have great sex lives. And I hope other parents want that for their kids too. You're going to be my in-laws someday, so please. Okay? But talking Dina, about masturbation, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, but there's a question even before we get to masturbation, which is, if I'm a parent who says, I know that I've got to have these conversations with my kids, and I want to empower my kids with knowledge, but I also recognize that I have my own shame surrounding this arena, or maybe specific parts of this arena that really make me pump my brakes. what is your message to that parent who recognizes that they do have shame about a specific topic in this arena, who doesn't want to project their own shame onto their kid? Because shame is as genetic, I guess maybe not genetic, but contagious as, anything in a family, right? Behaviorally.
Yeah.
So what would you say? What would you share to parents who don't want to project their own shame onto their kids?
That's a really great question. And so for me, I actually learned this from working. I did a retreat with, I think it was the Light Keepers years ago. It was a betrayal trauma group. And it was actually in my interaction with them that I realized that for me, at least, the best way was to journal it and to kind of really think about what are those things that I maybe had shame about, because all of us have something, and it might just be tiny. It might, because that's also what I have found in speaking to parents at different conferences or speaking events. When I talk one-on-one with a parent and we discuss what are those things that are very uncomfortable for you, or the shameful things, it is usually only one or two things, maybe at 3 or 4 max. But again, I think we let that build up in our heads, just like our kids might let that build up if they've seen something and they don't want to. We make it so much bigger than it is. Mm-hmm. But once you sit down and really think about it, maybe you go through the topics. On our website, we have tons of free things that will help you think about different topics of sex. So you don't necessarily have to go buy the book, but there are things that you can kind of go, okay, is it LGBTQ issues I'm not ready to talk about? Is it masturbation? Is it orgasm? What are these things that I'm not ready to talk about, and why? Or what are the things that I am really nervous about? Once you've kind of written it down, or maybe had a discussion with your partner, it really helps you to kind of concisely figure out what those things are, and it also is just a good exploration, I think, for us as individuals to kind of realize, well, where did we get our messages from sex? I bring up R-rated movies because I think as a teenager, I was able to kind of figure out the things that really created some patterns for me, or or beliefs about sex from those movies, and I think, oh my gosh, like in a way for me, it was like hilarious to see some of the things that I took as truth. Mm-hmm. Because I had seen it. And so I think as you analyze some of these things, one, it'll become less prominent, but then you'll also see the things that, okay, well, what would help me to build up to that topic? I didn't start out these talks talking about masturbation, that came later. Sexting or, sharing nudes wasn't a thing because my kids were 5 and 6. So I'm not going to start there, but those are definite conversations I have to have later when they became older. So that to me is first, the big thing is to find out, where you're at with that conversation, like, where your shame is. And then, but I think it's also okay to tell your kids, I don't have all the answers, or, I made some
Are you
mistakes.
serious?
Serious, totally serious.
No. That's like, but we know when bedtime is, and we know what the rules are, and we know what isn't okay in our house. Seriously, You really want me?
What happens when
kids,
you
I don't
have all the answers like me?
So now in the old days, though, when my kids were really little, I would say, let's go look that up together. But we don't do that anymore because you're going to come across
see stuff.
So I have had I have only had this a couple times, honestly, because I've studied a lot about sex, and it's a topic I have always been interested in, let's say. And so, but the couple of times I have said, I'm going to look that up and I'm going to get back to you tomorrow. And then you absolutely have to get back to them, because I do not believe in, I'll tell you when you're older. Yeah. For me, if my kids have asked the question, they're ready to hear the answer, including the one time my 9-year-old was standing behind me and I didn't realize it. And I said the words oral sex to a friend of mine. We were talking about Monica Lewinsky and her TED talk that she had given. And he said, Mom, what's oral sex? And I said, well, we better go have a discussion about that. So I excused myself from my friend, but I knew my 11-year-old didn't know the answer, didn't know that either. Got my husband and we had a discussion. And this 9-year-old is the genius who always asks questions also like, so Mom, what other types of sex are there? So
that's brilliant.
So we told,
because the fact that there was a question that followed the answer that you already gave him.
yeah,
Which okay, so I think that's an important point on this is for parents who are listening, it's a good thing if the kids continue to ask questions. So it sounds like you really need to just go into this with the idea that I've got to be prepared to say, I don't know, and I don't have all the answers, but we have resources that we can look at to help understand what these topics are. So is it also okay to put the message on the table to say, this isn't a one-off conversation. We're not checking a box here with this sex conversation, but this is a topic that we're going to put on the table and we're going to discuss with whatever regularity is appropriate for us, and we can decide what that is. So that way they know it's just this ongoing open conversation.
Absolutely.
At any time they can engage in.
I have heard of parents having a jar where kids can write an anonymous question. We've also done things where we've said, this is the safe zone, meaning you can ask me any question or tell me anything and you are not going to get in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I saw this, or, you know, maybe they're going to confess they lied or stole or broke something, whatever. Having a safe zone, I think, is where I'm not going to get upset. You can ask me anything. I want you to know that I love you and I want to hear from you. You can ask me anything, because that was kind of the goal that I set out with. And to me, that's an important goal, or excuse me, the point is to have a goal. You know, am I teaching my children to protect them when they're little? Absolutely. As they get older, I need them to know the answers from me, not the schoolyard. But I also, as they've gotten older and before they're getting ready for dating, I want them to know how they should be treated and how they should be treating the people that they date. Eventually with the goal of, I want my kids to have a good, healthy sex life. So these have been my goals as I have done these discussions. So it's important to have that, but yeah, and it's definitely okay to say, I don't have that answer right now. That is a great question, and I'm going to look that up and I'm going to talk to you about it tonight at dinner or tomorrow morning. But you got to follow up. You have got to. That you will lose credibility if you don't follow up, or if you say, I will tell you when you're older. Please don't do that. You know, do better. Bite the bullet if you're nervous about it. Tell your kids about it.
And we've told our kids several times, like, I wish I had asked my mom that. I wish I had felt safe enough to say these things and to kind of empower them to keep asking. It's okay. Because Coby and I, neither of us did ask anything. And there wasn't Google back then. So it really was just, hey, do you know what this is? Which is not great.
Yeah. I mean, I remember in junior high explaining things to girlfriends and being like, I cannot believe their parents haven't told them this. Like, it was so shocking. I remember being at BYU as a freshman, and we're sitting around a bunch of girls talking, and somebody said the word orgasm, and the girl next to me said, what is that? And I remember even then going, your parents have failed you, that you're 18 years old and you don't know what this is. Now, this is 20 years ago when I went to BYU, but still, I know that those kids still exist. And that is definitely something that happens in various, not just Christian cultures and Muslim cultures and various cultures. We have this, and those days are numbered though, but we have a lot of girls coming up, getting ready to get married, and they have a boyfriend or husband that has been looking at porn for years and years. And then we have that disconnect happening now. But that's going to be different. I already sensed that for my 17-year-old son. He's not going to face that nearly as much. The girls will be unfortunately just as porn literate as the boys when they get married in their late 20s, whenever.
Wow. Well, I mean, I think this has been just enormously helpful by way of discussion. And I think, again, the real key behind all of this for us was knowing that, number one, your content, Dina, allows us to not be the expert. Your content is short and it's easily consumed. We also know that it can foster additional questions to which we don't have to have answers for, but because there's glossaries like you've talked about, then we can easily find those and have those conversations. And my hope is that anybody who's listening, who's like, I don't even know where to start. can find you online, and we'll get to that in just a second, and just say, okay, where do I need to start? What do I need in order to get these discussions going? Because ultimately, we want our kids to be as prepared as they can be to face life, but this is going to be a huge part of someone's life, especially if it's not talked about and they become a Coby, where it's just kind of all consuming, unbeknownst to their parents because of ignorance.
Yeah. Well, when we're not saying something, we're still saying something, right? So
absolutely,
we might as well get it out
absolutely.
there.
And that's,
Dina, where can we find you? Where can our listeners find where you live virtually?
Virtually, I was like, where I live.
What's your address?
I'm in New Mexico, the land of enchantment. So we are at educateempowerkids.org. We are also on Instagram and Facebook, EduEmpowerKids. All of our books are available on Amazon. So we have the 30 days of sex talks for ages 3 to 7, 8 to 11, and 12 plus.
Cool.
Have, like we already mentioned before, the How to Talk to Your Kids About Pornography. And then most recently, we've come out with a book called Conversations with My Kids, 30 Essential Family Discussions for the Digital Age. And in it, we talk about social media. We, of course, hit on pornography, but we also talk about everything else that basically our parents didn't have to worry about. There are discussions about racism. There are discussions about terrorism. There are discussions about integrity, finding joy, overcoming fears. Some of these things that I think our parents relied on the school system to teach, and things that we certainly cannot rely on. But I really hope all the parents listening realize, like Coby said, you don't have to be an expert. Our kids just need to know that we care and we love them. They're not going to listen to a word we say unless we have conveyed that first, and that their curiosities are normal. They are biological, that all of us have curiosity, that it's natural to want to see naked people, and that all of the parents, that you can do this, whether your kids are little or old. I think if you did look at the books, you will find that there's some things that you've already covered, and that should be a comfort to you. And then start
Totally.
and then move on from there. A lot of this for the younger kids is protective information. I'm sure a lot of us are realizing, 90% of sexual abuse happens from people we know, not from strangers. And so that's why, again, it is so important to have these conversations when they're very young, and then help them, especially before they're exposed to pornography, not when they already have a problem with it.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks, Dina.
Thank you.
That was awesome. Thank you so much.
So.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We'll see ya.